I actually remember our last match. It was in South Carolina, and we were wrestling this team, and this fella came back, and he was one of the guys we were wrestling. He goes, "Oh man, it's just going to be a privilege to wrestle the cream team." And I'm like, "Who are you?" You know, and I didn't realize that we had, even though I felt that their egos were really overinflated, I still didn't realize how much of an impact we had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's kind of odd when you think about it. We had these big egos, but I didn't really see what impact there was. And he's just like, "Oh, this is going to be great and great, you know, and just really kept building us up. And we did the match, and as we were leaving, Dave started talking about a different gimmick that, and I was like, okay, this is the end of it. You know, it's really not working anymore, because he wanted us to do an Italian gimmick. And at that point, I was like, that's not me. And if he's talking about changing the gimmick, you know, around, then that means he's tired of it too, you know. So it's not, if his heart's not into it, and he's talking about another gimmick. And after thinking about it for a couple of days, I suggested that he call up Nick Tarantino, because he was the better fit for that. I'm not no Italian, you know, and it just wasn't going to work. Nick was the by far better choice for that, and I was willing to step aside, you know, so that Dave could advance into where he wanted to go.
And you did. I look back at Dave and you against Nick and I at North Carroll as a really, really interesting, good match.
This way. There was at least one bright moment in all of tonight. No, it was not when you arrived. Of course, you arrived in a pine box, so.
Well, that was an interesting one. Mickey. Some fun. Oh, wrong corner.
That was it's an interesting dynamic, because Nick and I had split. Nick still wanted to tag. I was much like what you're saying. My ego started to bloat, and I was like, well, I need to do things on my own. So we split, and Dave and Nick wound up together. And I never knew that you're actually gave Dave the blessing behind the scenes and said, look, you got to do this. That's I mean, for them it worked out.
I'm always for what, you know, the betterment of somebody. You know, if it can better you to go somewhere, then you go and you take that route. If I'm a stumbling block, you know, by all means, I'll step aside. And it just seemed so natural. I remember sitting in a Denny's talking about this Italian gimmick, and the more he got talking about it, I was like, it's just so natural for Nick Tarantino to be in this spot, and not me. You know, it was just a much better. And then their manager, Dennis
De Niro.
The three just really meshed well together. As a matter of fact, I wrestled in several tag team matches against them to help get them over. You know, to push them as a tag team as well. Yeah.
And that's kind of be a little bit odd.
To me, it wasn't, because I saw everything, you know, at that time as the next step forward. It just wasn't odd to me. I knew that we could work well together, and if it meant making them better at what they do, I looked at it as doing that, and it was good training for me as well. Because at that time it was when I was trying to deflate my ego as well. What can I do to help put other people over? Is how I started looking at things. I think it was when the team actually broke up, that's when I actually started to not only better myself as a wrestler, but to better myself as a person in the business, because I really felt that my ego was just way out of control at that time, and I do recall, stepping aside and putting people over in the business.
And we're talking right now, that would have been in the area of about 95, right about there?
No, I think we split up somewhere around 93.
93?
And then I did about 2 years on my own after that. Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Tim.
At that time, when you split up, were you thinking about a new gimmick for yourself as well?
I was back and forth, actually. I was trying to, how can I develop Rip Sawyer into a better personality? But I was also falling under the same curse that I was that I felt was bad in wrestling in the beginning. Stupid gimmicks. I just thought it was really stupid that you gotta, because everybody kept saying you gotta have an over-the-top gimmick in order to get somewhere.
Right.
And I just didn't believe in that. I just didn't like it. And people coming in with these crazy outfits and all that stuff. Just didn't appeal to me. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to make it in this business, maybe I better come up with some crazy gimmicks. I started tinkering around with a mask and gluing real human hair to the mask and coming up with some kind of devil-like gimmick at that time. But that really didn't last very long, and I went right back to being Rip Sawyer and how I can better Rip Sawyer. And I started doing jobs for the WWF and WCW. I actually felt, in order for me to progress better, I went backwards and started doing jobs. Mm-hmm. I felt I could learn more by doing jobs and things like that.
Did there come a point that you just said, okay, I need to step away from the wrestling business completely?
Yes, that at some point, I think it was Dave's demons that were getting the better of him. Even after we split, we started, as time went on, we weren't getting along as time went on after the split. There was just, his demons were just a little too much for me to deal with, and I wasn't getting booked on a lot of local shows for some odd reason. But anyhow, towards the end, I got, my wife and I adopted 2 little girls. They were 3 and 1 at the time. And I got a call from, I believe his name was Mike Winter from WCW, and he trained at that, what were they called? The
power plant?
The power plant when it first opened up. He called me and said that he received my letter. Actually, it was more than one letter. I said 50 of the same letters with 50 of the same pictures. Figured they got to open one. He said, well, we got your letter. And I kind of chuckled when he said it. And he said, I'm going to send you an official letter inviting you down here at the power plant. And I said, is this just to use your school, or is it actual training for WCW? He goes, it's training for WCW, an audition, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But at that time, it was at the exact same time that I adopted these 2 little girls. So I flew to Georgia for 3 days, and I trained one day there, and it was tough. It was tough. And I sat in my hotel bed that night, nursing my wounds and stuff from the training. And I'm thinking, I just adopted 2 little girls. Let's just say they do offer me a contract. Let's just say, in all likelihood, they probably wouldn't have, but let's just say that they did, I'd be out on the road.
Right.
And these 2 little girls need a father in their life, is the way that I looked at it. And I took them out of a bad situation, and they were in a better situation. What kind of situation would I be putting them in if I was out on the road? Right. I might have been making more money at the time than I was making, but they wouldn't have had a father in their life. So I sat in a tub of ice that night, and then I decided I was flying back home tomorrow, and I wasn't going back for any more training. And it was at that point that's when I said it's done. Okay. Because the girls needed a father as opposed to someone being out on the road seeking his own dreams, right, instead of trying to help them live a life. Bob Starr asked if I would come back for one show, and I was like, actually, I didn't want to, because I think he asked me a year before that, if I'm not mistaken. And I was like, no, I don't want to. And then he asked me again, and I was coming off of the death of my mother, which was very hard on me at the time. And I was like, this might be what I need to clear my mind of things, get back into some training and just get my mind focused after the passing of my mother. So I sat on it for about a week, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it, And then he hooked me up with Mark Osborne, and everything led to there. I started doing all my training here, and then I'd travel 4 hours every week to the school.
Right.
And then they asked, well, who do you want to wrestle? And I said, is Ricky Blue still in the business? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, well, he's the one I'd really like to work. And they were like, Mark Osborne said, well, he was the man I had in mind for you. I said, well, then there you go.
And we made history that night. But you're skipping over the most important thing, the thing that I loved about that period and that's Maryland Championship Wrestling, is they created a Hall of Fame. And they brought you in to induct you into that Hall of Fame. There's very few people who actually deserved it. You are one of those few people who actually deserved to go in that Hall of Fame, and you did. And you did one of the most classy things that I've ever seen in your acceptance speech. And it showed what a big heart you have, what an open person you are, and what a true man you are. And that is, that night when you accepted your induction into the Hall of Fame, you accepted it as a member of the Cream Team, and there was an empty seat for Dave DiMeglio, Dave Casanova, who had passed away. And I thought, and you recognized that, and I thought that was one of the most classy things that I'd ever seen on any type of independent show. I thought that was to me, that was humbling, and it was unsettling all at the same time, because it brought back a ton of emotions of guys who knew him and knew you guys together, and I thought that was incredible. So I look at that moment, that 2010 induction that you had there, with very, very proud eyes and proud memories.
It was a touching moment. I especially liked the part where I got everyone to chant 214, which was our call for the step over drop kick, or drop down drop kick, whatever you want to call the maneuvers at the time. Dave and I had this knack for calling out numbers for our maneuvers. 847, which never meant anything. It was just, if we're going to do this and that, we'll just call a number out. But for some reason, 214 stuck as the step over drop kick. I'd have my opponent, and Dave would yell 214, and then I'd give him the thumbs up and throw the opponent. I'd drop down, the opponent steps over me, and Dave would just nail him with his awesome drop kicks. He would nail it, guys. He wasn't light with his drop kicks.
They were beautiful, though. They were on the money.
He would decapitate a person's head with his drop kicks. And so that night, in remembrance of Dave, I would say, let's all give a chant for 214. I got everybody to chant 214 several times. Yeah, it was a very heartfelt, tender, bittersweet moment.
Right.
At that time. Yeah.
That seat's empty for a reason. We're missing one man. One man is not here with us today. And we were noted for one special maneuver. I'd throw my opponent into the ring. I'd drop down. And my opponent was drop kicking. And we called it the 214. So in memory of Don and Dave Casanova, I want to hear us yell 214 3 times as loud as we can. 1, 2, 3. 214! 214!
That night, you and I put on a show that was almost a retro show. Tim, you covered it. The match wasn't a new school match. It was very much old school. I look at that match and I say, wow, we stepped into a time capsule and gave them something, and the fans, I think, appreciated it. I thought they really appreciated it. We had a third part in that match, and that was the introduction of my son in the storyline, which I thought handled really, really well. Tell us, the fans, some of your memories about that night with that match, if you can.
What I remember about that night, what What I really wanted to do was work somebody over. It's hard to work the average wrestling fan to make them believe something. So
Right.
I wanted to go in with something. I got to work somebody. I want somebody to think that something's real. Who better to work than the guys back in the locker room? And that's when I came up with the idea. Let's pretend you're injured. And it worked so well that the commentary on the video kind of gets a little quiet. And I think you hear Dwayne Gill say, we need a paramedic.
Well, let's send our fans right to that very moment, because it was something that I'll never forget, pulling kayfabe on the boys, which is very, very hard to do. Let's take a look.
Uh-oh. Do I see it? Oh!
Dropped him right on his head.
I think he killed him. Get somebody out of here. I think somebody's got to get out here now. Oh! It was a ploy. It looks like it was a ploy. Oh, what, had they been over your house?
Like I said, Ricky Blues is one of the most intelligent wrestlers I have ever seen.
That's just wrong.
Unlike you.
Oh, he's been healed.
There it is, the power of positive thinking.
What an accomplishment coming right from your mind, Rip. I thought that was an incredible ploy. And old school, we pulled it off.
That was probably one of my better moments to remember, that we actually worked a few of the boys back in the locker room, that you were actually injured.
Yeah, and we had to keep it completely kayfabed,
Yes.
so that no one knew. And then when it pulls off, Tim, I think you were even hoodwinked, and you're the photographer that's seen a lot. And it came off really good, and we did the whole resurrecting, bringing me back to life. And
I'm healed.
and it went
It's a
really
miracle.
it went
Classic wrestling stuff that a lot of people today should really study and get back into, because it can still work if it's used correctly.
if you work it properly. If you could step back to 2015's Sid Garrison and talk to 1991's Rip Sawyer, what would you say? And then what would you tell the fans that are watching this today?
Shut up, listen, hit the road, and pay your dues. Hit any independent promotion that you can get. Don't be involved in any commitments with anybody, because it's not going to work. And I'm, talking like boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever it may be. Hit the road and get all your experience on the road. Don't just stay in your local area. Expand yourself and go out as far as you can and get all the work experience that you can in the business. If you got to work yourself as a dishwasher to earn your gasoline money and a little bit of food money and live out of your car, that's what you do.
It's excellent words. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you've enjoyed this interview with one of the true icons, a true pioneer in the Mid-Atlantic. That's Rip Sawyer. And we're reminding you to join us again next week as we take another stroll down Concussion Lane and bring you just one more pioneer.